Welcome to our Devil. Today we are taking a look at r/prorevenge. Our first story is from young sour Swede. My hag of a stepmom gave away my PlayStation 4 while I was away in college, so I rent out her house while she was on her honeymoon with her newest husband. I have been reading lots of Reddit lately, especially entitled parents, but made a new account when I came across this page. I never thought I'd actually try to contribute something. Until now Reddit has just been my guilty morning coffee read. So here goes. I'm an only son. My mom died of ovarian cancer at only 5 years ago. It broke my dad's heart. They had been together since college and were the same age, with my dad being a month older. I'm 22, and am about to graduate college with my degree in chemistry when the main events start to occur. I went to college on a full-ride scholarship. This is important later. My dad met my now stepmom when she was my mom's nurse at the hospital, where she spent her final days. My stepmom, Grace, played all the right notes to gain my dad's trust. She was empathetic to him, nurturing, comforting after my mom passed. I was 17 and old enough to sense that she was just trying to weasel her way into getting my dad's resources. But it was up to my dad if he wanted to be in a relationship with her. I was in my final year of public school and had just won a scholarship to attend college out of the country the following year. My dad mourned my mom for a year, and that whole time Grace would check in on him by phone every month or so, in my opinion, to scope out the possibility of sinking her hooks in him. After a year passed, Grace took the gloves off and went hard after my dad. Grace was only 40 when she and my dad started seeing each other. I didn't like her, but at the same time my dad at least didn't seem so depressed anymore. So I tried to be less pessimistic about her and give her the benefit of the doubt. In my gut I didn't trust her, though. But we are Scandinavian, and at least in my family the son does not tell his father what to do or even offer any opinion. Grace is from the Czech Republic, if you're wondering. My father was a very successful banker during his career, and amassed quite a portfolio of wealth. I'll spare you the details. But after 6 months of dating, Grace and my father are married. My dad never really got over my mom though. And he was getting weaker and weaker even though he was only 57. Since his health was fading, he called me to him and asked me point blank, "Boy, what do you need to set you up in this life?" I told him I don't need anything. I'm a man and can take care of myself. But what are you even talking about, Dad? You're going to be around for decades yet. I did remind him that he had living sisters with children, my aunts and cousins. I also reminded him that I had a full scholarship to college, so don't worry about giving me any cash. He was dead only a year later at 59. I of course have seen lots of Hollywood movies, so I consider the conspiracy theory that maybe my dad's nurse wife poisoned him and made him sign over all his money to her. But I really honestly do not think that's what happened. Other relatives didn't like Grace either. But they knew my dad was totally in love with my mom and that her death utterly broke him. Well, long story short, my dad bequeathed his 5-bedroom house to me even though I wasn't expecting it and didn't ask for it. He gave a small endowment to each of his sisters and their children. He left about 80% of all his existing money to Grace, which amounted to several hundreds of thousands of dollars. My dad ignored me because he's generous to a fault and still gave me several tens of thousands of dollars, which were of course very useful to me. Grace tried to put on a friendly front, but I could tell she was angry as hell that she didn't get my dad's house, too. That belonged to me, and I had the legal papers to prove it. She was especially mad because we live in an extremely upscale and trendy location, and houses are hard to come by and easily sold for massive profit. During the first few months after my dad's death, I had the nauseating, creepy experience of knowing that Grace was trying to feel me out to see if I might be into a little relationship with her. Gross. She still stayed at the house though, because over the last 3 years she had gotten used to living there and acting like she owned it. And even though I officially owned it, I was always away at college and only visited my dad's old house once every couple of months. And even then it wasn't to see Grace, but to see my cousins who lived just a few miles away. I downplayed the fact that it was really my house. And over the months I think Grace gradually forgot that she really had no legal right to the house. She probably believed that sooner or later, Because I never asked her for any of the hundreds of thousands of my dad's dollars that she now had. That I was somehow independently wealthy and would just give up my house to her. I knew I'd eventually hydrogen bomb this bee when she started dating some new guy only 5 months after my dad was in the ground. And one time when I came home from college after graduating, she and her new boyfriend, some sleazy-looking D-bag named Ivan, who was only a few years older than me, were acting like I was a guest in my own house and that they owned it. I played along. Grace told me she gave away my PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because I'm too old to play with video games. I don't even know this motherducker and you give him my PS4 to give away to some other shit who I also don't know. I quickly changed all my network passwords that same day. I smiled, but I knew what I had to do eventually. She also said that she and Ivan were getting married because I just can't mourn your father forever. I have to move on with life. I tell her that I graduated college and already secured employment with a local firm. And will soon find a new place to live. She looks thrilled. Especially the part where it looks like I'll soon have a new place to live. Then in a patronizing way she tells me, "You always have a place in our house though. You are welcome to stay whenever you please." Thanks, Grace. Really generous of you. What I really say is that I will probably have a new place in 3 months. She says that is wonderful because she intends to go to her homeland. To have a wedding with Ivan and afterward have her honeymoon. She assures me it's a local affair. Otherwise I'd invite you. Honey. And anyway, I know you're so busy. I congratulate her. She asks me if I can watch the house for her. Watch my own house? Sure. What I really say is of course I will take care of the house. I am careful to not say, your house. She and her D-bag fiancé, who I am 100% sure is only there for Grace's money, go on their trip and I immediately put out advertisements in rental websites offering to lease my house. I hire movers and have all of Grace's furniture and possessions boxed up and put into a storage rental facility. I retain all of my parents' furniture that they had before my dad met Grace. Locks? Changed. All of them. Within days. I am inundated with dozens of inquiries regarding my amazing, furnished house with fantastic views. I rent it to a wonderful young family. A barrister and his schoolteacher wife and their 2 preteen children. They pay me their first and last month's rent. And sign a lease for a year. I warn them about my crazy stepmom who thinks this is her house. But I present them with contact information to my lawyer, the same lawyer my dad retained, in case they need any assurance that I'm on the level. I also give my lawyer the information about the storage facility, including the fact that I generously paid 4 months of storage in advance, which is a whole month longer than Grace's Czech honeymoon adventure. I then found a great apartment in the city near my new place of work. There I met a woman in a restaurant I frequent at night after a long workday. We have been dating 6 months now and are engaged to be married. Grace of course tried to shriek and cause trouble when she realized she got kicked out of my house, but my lawyer quickly shut her mouth without my having to ever speak to her garbage face again. From what I hear, her and her trash husband left the country and I assume they're blowing through my dad's money and will soon be broke like chavs usually become when they taste a little bit of what they think is the good life. So maybe Grace will go and try to exploit some other lonely man into giving her his money. Speaking of money, the house that I rent out is generating so much money that I not only am able to help pay for my cousin's college, but I moved into a larger apartment of my own, together with my fiancé. I love my job, but really, I could survive solely on renting my dad's old house. And to think, if Grace had only been cooler and nicer, I might have let her stay at the house. Just to be a good sport. And definitely if she stayed the hell out of my room. But no. She had to act all proprietary. So I had to make her homeless as a wedding gift. Postscript. I bought another PS4. Even though I didn't even use my old one that much. It didn't matter. It wasn't for Grace to give away. You don't give away other people's things. You give away your own things. Which is why I chose to kick Grace out of my house. Because it's mine. And I decide who stays there. Comment by Xord your host tonight. Comment by Rainfall. Grace really isn't that bright. Comment by the many-face Asian. Our next story is from Kveldson. Evil stepfather gets what he deserves. When I was 15. My mom started dating a man she met on a dating website. I didn't like him the first time I met him, and 2 months later he moved into the house. About 3 weeks after he moved in, he took my skateboards, self-built halfpipe, ramps, BMX bike, ice hockey gear, and many other things to the dump one day while I was at school. He said he did this because he didn't want all of my crap cluttering up his garage. Maybe 2 months later he punched me in the stomach for the first time because I got up from the dinner table without asking to be excused. From there it escalated into full-fledged beatdowns for the smallest perceived slight to his authority. One day he decided to take my extensive Pokémon card collection, even more extensive comic book collection, my Game Boy and PS2 with all the assorted games, and my fantasy and sci-fi book collection, and got rid of it all because 15-year-old boys should be playing football and baseball, not being a Fayot nerd playing with Pokémon cards and reading comics and books. I would like to add that he was a middle school teacher, and in his off time refereed and umpired local middle and high school sports games. My mom never intervened, and in fact acquiesced when he demanded that she stop giving me lunch money, because the little shit will just spend it on comics and other gay shit. One day, I took maybe $3 and change out of his change jar so that I could buy a slice of pizza and some fruit punch during lunch at school, because I was tired of being hungry. My twin sister was always a bit of an antagonist, and frequently blackmailed me into doing her chores from a young age. I was fed up and refused to do something, so she told him what I had done. This man actually called the police and pressed a larceny charge against me, and once the police had left, proceeded to beat me senseless. At that point I ran away. When the cops found me and returned me to my home, I found out that he had been trying to talk my mom into sending me away to military school or something of that nature. I ran away again, and between having run away several times and the larceny charge ended up turning 16 in juvenile detention. I spent the next couple years miserable and afraid, frequently contemplating suicide. Once I was out on my own, I didn't speak to my mom for several years. We eventually reconciled, and by that point they had married. I was a lot bigger than I had been as a young teenager, and had gotten into weightlifting, so he no longer acted like he was going to punch me to make me flinch, much less actually hit me, and we basically avoided each other for the most part. My mother found out that she had stage 4 cancer, and no longer wanted to waste any of the time she had left with him. So she had a lawyer draft up a separation agreement whereby he would receive a set amount of money upon separation, and would have 45 days to retrieve his belongings from the house. He had spent his entire inheritance in 6 months and then had to sell his mother's house that he grew up in order to settle his debts shortly before they started dating. And my mother bought the house back from the bank before they married. She allowed him to keep the house and he moved back into his mother's house. My mother passed away about 9 months after their separation, and despite the agreement had been allowing him to come and get his stuff piecemeal, I put an immediate end to that. He was past the deadline to remove his personal effects, and they were now legally mine to dispose of as I saw fit. I sold his baseball card collection, around $14,000, and his autographed sports memorabilia, roughly $11,000, and also sold all of his woodworking equipment, along with several finished pieces of furniture that he had made, $6,500 I think. I kept his mother's engagement ring, platinum band 3 diamonds, roughly 2 carats, wedding band, his coin collection. I also collect coins, and some tools and other odds and ends. Now comes the real fun. Around a month ago I finally saw him at the grocery store. As he was leaving I approached him. I told him I had sold his collections as he was pushing his cart out towards his car. He reacted exactly as I expected. He took a swing at me multiple times. I already had my phone ready to dial 911. Several of these punches missed, and the ones that did connect didn't have much effect because he's nowhere near as strong as he was 20 years ago in his 40s. And I no longer a skinny little 15-year-old. He continued to try to punch me as I spoke to the 911 operator, and was actively ramming his grocery cart into my new Toyota as the police officers pulled into the parking lot. He was arrested for assault, communicating threats, and destruction of property. As a result, he lost his job and pension at the local middle school. And because he had never learned how to save money while married to my somewhat wealthy mother, ended up having to sell his mother's house because he hired an expensive lawyer thinking he could somehow beat the charges. My nephew, who was on the football team, made it well known to his friends that he not only had just been arrested and convicted of assault as well as other charges, but that he had also beat me as a child, causing several parents to call for him to resign from refereeing and umpiring for local sports games. My niece and my girlfriend's much younger sister are enrolled at the middle school where he worked, and say that he was not only universally disliked, but when he came up to the school to get his belongings, he made a big scene and ended up hysterically crying as he was leaving. At least that's what they've heard from the kids who were attending summer school at the time. His son, who he was equally abusive towards as a child, refused to take him in or help him out, so the abusive stepfather ended up having to take a job as a cashier at Walmart so that he could afford the rent on his crappy little trailer in an absolutely awful neighborhood. Even though that Walmart is not the closest Walmart to my house. That is now the only place where I go grocery shopping or to purchase anything that I need. I purposely stand in line longer than I need to just so that he can be the one who has the pleasure of ringing up my purchases. The first time I went through his line, he attempted to ring up multiple items more than one time to overcharge me, and when I called him on it, he said that I was mistaken. I asked for a manager, and the manager believed him that it was an accident, but he learned that he can't get away with that. The second time, I made sure to be as nice as possible and had to ask for a manager because he was overwhelmingly rude. The people in line behind me backed me up, and he got in some trouble for that. Every time I go there and step into line, I see him die a little bit inside. And it gives me such satisfaction. Sometimes I'll say that I'm paying with exact change, and as I'm about to hand him the money I'll say, "Oh, I didn't realize I had rare coin from his collection in my pocket. I guess I'll use my credit card. I just sold his expensive ratcheting wrench set." And so on Monday when he works again, I'm going to go buy my daughter one of their better above-ground pools. And as he's ringing it out, tell him, I know that daughter is just going to love this pool. It's not like I would have ever used those expensive ratcheting wrenches anyway. Comment by Arctic Technician. Eye for an eye. Man, you took his ducking organs. Comment by Spoof Code 17. Tit for tat fam. Tit for tat. Comment by Eat It and Yeet It. Holy shit. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button, and subscribe to our devil. See you in the next one.